the weirder the story is about what we did in the cult, the higher chance that there is abuse in there.
Mm.
But the weirder things is, the more easy it is to laugh at. So it could be that the worse abuse is, the weirder stuff there is, but that also allows you to laugh at all that weird stuff if you are able to look at it in a playful way.
We have a tremendous privilege, I think, today, which is that Yuval Laor, who is one of the few people I know who's actually doing leading edge research into social science. So this is not what I tend to do is read what people have said and try and package it in a way that's more comprehensible. What Yuval does is actually digging deep into things. We've already have your wonderful presentations on awe,
Hmm.
fervor, and belief, which I recommend to everybody if they want to understand how cultic involvement happens. This is a vital missing piece, something that's really not been emphasized and should be. It's really important. So Yuval, you gave a presentation at ICSA about
Yep.
humor and awe, having done some more research. This is all heading towards your new book, which we hope will be out
Hmm.
in the next 10 years. It's been 10
Yeah.
years that we've been talking about it. And I, I've seen the presentation. I think it's really insightful, really important. So without further ado,
Hmm.
Yuval Laor's presentation. Here we are.
Thank you, and feel free to interrupt me with questions and such. This is a talk about awe, humor, and recovery from cults. I'll just give a little background on how I got to this. I mean, I've been researching awe in this context for a long time, but about a year ago or a year and a half ago, I did a book review as a favor about the history of humor. And I started reading philosophy of humor, which, I wasn't even that familiar with as a subject. But when I researched the different theories of humor, I noticed that there is certain connection with awe, that every theory of humor contradicts some aspect of awe. So that is the inspiration of this talk. So this is the presentation in my talk in front of people, which is always better to talk
I
to
am a
people.
person. I am a
Yeah,
person.
yeah, but you're not a crowd. So,
I am a
um,
crowd. My name is
um,
Legion, for we are many.
yeah, I started the talk by saying that this is going to be a serious talk. So I'm going to ask you to refrain from laughing until the end of the talk. And that got a laugh. And so that's
You
it.
had to send the
But
people out of the room immediately.
that's right. This is a serious talk. So this is the book that I am working on, and I'm fairly close to the end. So look for it soon. And maybe I'll change the title to The Perils of Awe and The Dark Side of Awe.
I mean, it started out as your PhD dissertation
Yeah,
as the religious ape. Yeah,
but I figured that that might
we're
be.
now a couple of decades on from that.
Yeah, and now it's fervor,
Hmm.
spelled in the American way over
Yeah,
here. The argument or central theme of this talk is that awe is incompatible with humor, that is, psychologically incompatible, or largely incompatible. We'll see that there are cases where they can overlap. But normally, in general, they are like oil and water, right? They don't mix. And there are many very serious awe situations where humor is completely incompatible. My psychiatrist friend, when I talked to him about this, he said, yeah, well, humor is incompatible with all dissociated states, which could be the case. And it's because humor, not laughter, but we'll get to that, but humor is a commentary on reality. And dissociated states are, in a way, disengagement from reality. You're dissociating from reality. And as such, humor, which is always a commentary on reality, is incompatible with all dissociated states. But awe, especially the strong awe experiences that we'll discuss here, are dissociative. So as such, it makes sense. Now, I talked a lot about awe in other contexts on this channel also, but I'll just do a reminder about three important properties of awe. There's many other relevant and important properties to awe. But the thing that induces awe, a strong awe experience, which can be whatever, a miracle, a celebrity, but the awe experience feels like something is really real. The awe experience can function as a proof of things. We'll get to that a little later. And awe experiences are serious and many times urgent, and they're important. And the things that induce awe in us, they require our attention and they are very important. And the third property of awe is that it's connected to vastness. So vastness is both something that induces awe when you think of the size of the galaxy or the age of the universe or something, or that we are made of trillions of cells and each one of them is gigantic.
Well, the
Uh,
James
um,
Webb Telescope has now observed 780,000 galaxies. The Hubble did 10,000.
And we are made out of between 25 and 75 trillion cells, and each one of them is way more complicated than the sun or, you know. So yeah, vastness, but also if whatever caused the awe is not connected to vastness, if it's music, for example, the experience can have a vastness as component of the experience of awe. So you feel like you're in close to something bigger than you many times, for example.
And
Or
this, to
the,
some extent, we have religious experiences. The way that this
Mhm.
connects to authoritarian cults is where experiences are induced, peak experiences or
Yeah.
awe experiences, which will attach a person to a belief system. So
Mhm.
awe is really important in
Yeah.
understanding cultic
Yeah,
behavior.
I'll say that awe is to a religion or a cult like the emotion of love is to a family, or the equivalent is the abusive family, the
Yep.
cultic equivalent. Yeah, so it's a very strange relationship. It's not a simple relationship, right? The emotion of love to family, it's a very long distance, but it is a very central ingredient in the whole family thing. Let's get back to humor. So these are the three main theories of humor. And remember that we're talking about humor and not laugh,
Yeah.
because laughter, right? Babies laugh, laughing gas can make you laugh. Hyenas laugh, right? So you don't need humor for laughter. So their laughter is compatible with awe. And there are groups that do a lot of humorless laughter to induce awe, even. So
Scientology indeed has a process that goes
mhm,
start laughing,
yeah, and TR2, right? Or the Alice in Wonderland.
TRs 1 and 2.
Yeah. So let's get to the first theory of humor. It's the incongruity theory of humor. The incongruity theory says that the punchline shows you that you are wrong, that there was some incompatibility between what you thought and what was going on. Okay. So if you take this joke, right, this is Han Solo and Carbonite, which is a Star Wars reference. That would be Harrison Ford here. And the other side, we have Tom Hanks in Philadelphia, which, of course, Tom Hanks won the Academy Award for the movie Philadelphia. So Philadelphia in this joke is not a city. It is both a cheese and a movie, but not a city. But the humor here, and of course I'm explaining a joke, but this joke is so good that it actually can survive, right? So we have this is Harrison Ford in the movie in
Carbonite
Star Wars, and here we have Tom Hanks in Philadelphia.
in
But
Philadelphia.
the pun in the joke is that the word in here and the word in here, they're both the same word, but they mean very different things. Or normally they should mean this is in a movie. Here is in this position means being stuck in a certain suspended, and carbonite is. And this is the same in. So the joke is we're going to take the in from this context and we're going to use it in the same way in this context, just that this time the Philadelphia will be different. So anyway, by now this is already not funny because I explained it too much. But the humor in this theory of humor is the incompatibility. So, for example, if I tell you a joke, this is an American joke, right? So you tell it to a fellow American, you say, why did the Siamese twins go to England? And the answer is that the other one can drive. And the joke is, you think, why would people go to London? And you think for whatever cultural reasons. But in the punchline, you said, no, 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 that you should have thought of London as the place where you sit in the other side of the car. So the punchline where the humor comes in is when you realize that you made a mistake of some kind.
My
So
dog has no nose. How does he smell?
awful. So now incongruent humor can be mean and can be in bad taste and dark, right? This is a painting by Adolf Hitler. So if you can't paint this well, and John Atack can paint this well, so he's better than Hitler, but I am worse than Hitler. And this is the most famous quote from the philosophy of humor. This is by E.B. White, an author that wrote Charlotte's Web and other stuff. And he writes this in the introduction to his wife's book about humor. So his wife wrote a book about humor, but he was the one that had a famous quote out of that book from the introduction. And he says that humor, or a joke, can be dissected as a frog can, but the thing dies in the process, and the innards are discouraging to any but the pure scientific mind. Because humor depends on incongruity, when you explain a joke, that takes away the incongruity. You explain why you should have thought this, but then the punchline came and you thought that. Or you realize that you should have thought that. But that takes away the surprise. It takes away the incongruity and it takes away the humor. So explaining a joke ruins the joke. So that is the incongruity theory of humor, and we'll see that that is incompatible with the really real of the awe. The next theory of humor is that humor is playful, and that playfulness is necessary aspect of humor. So, for example, let's take a situation where someone walks down the street and they step on a banana peel and they slip and fall down. Now, that is humorous, and you can say that the incongruity theory would tell you that at first we saw that person walking down the street, we thought of them as a person, maybe with a family, maybe with a profession, maybe with hopes, maybe with dreams. And then when they slip on the banana peel and fall down, we realize that we made a mistake. We should have thought of them as a mass, acceleration, elasticity. Will the person bounce as they slip down? But notice that even though this was a very common humorous thing 120 years ago when Charlie Chaplin was making movies, today we know that when you fall like that, that can be serious. You might actually hurt yourself. And so today, when you see someone walking down the street and slipping on a banana peel, first we're going to make sure that it's not serious. If he's okay, we can say, oh, then it's funny. But it might not be funny if they really, really, really hurt themselves. So the seriousness of the situation robbed the humor out of it, because playfulness is a necessary part of humor according to the playfulness theory of humor, and they put playfulness at the center. And there's a lot of arguments within the philosophy of humor. It's a very unsettled field. Now, let's get to the third theory of humor. This is the superiority theory of humor, where you're laughing at someone, right? So we have here the wet floor, and then the Lego Darth Vader is slipping on the floor. And that could be funny because we know it's not serious. And it's because the incongruity, because of how serious of a character Darth Vader is, but then how silly it is for him to slip on the floor, right? So that's the incongruity, which you could argue for. But with the superiority theory of humor, we laugh at something, at someone, and we feel superior to them. We feel like we are better than them. We feel like we're laughing at them. We're belittling them. We're putting them down. We're looking down at them. So,
which is the type of humor of the jester or the fool that we find
yeah.
throughout history.
Yeah, but notice that with the jester, the incongruity, the mismatch between what he says and reality, that you cannot say that to the king. You know, he says the dark truths because it is a humor thing. So the incongruity allows the jester to present truths that are not acceptable in other contexts. So yeah, many times this is the only, in cults, there are cults that are humorless completely, and there are cults where only superiority theory of humor is allowed. So in Scientology, at some point, Hubbard outlaws laughing and degrading, right?
Joking and degrading.
Joking and degrading.
You can't make any jokes about Hubbard, but he will constantly make superiority comments. So throughout his lectures, it's anticipated that if he mentions psychiatry, psychology, psychotherapy, that's funny. That's a put down. That's, we have a superior knowledge. I, many, many years ago, as a teenager, went to a Christadelphian meeting that a friend of mine wanted me to go to. And I thought he wanted me to go because he thought it was funny. And he didn't. He take me because he wanted to join them. And there was a point where somebody said something about Darwin and monkeys, and the whole room burst out into laughter. How could these inferior, scientifically minded people possibly believe in evolution?
Yeah.
And yet we do.
Yeah.
Though we're not descended from monkeys, I'm afraid to say. Can't be helped.
More
like a kind of
monkey
rat,
cousins.
I think,
Yeah. Well, the proto primates. So here's just another example. Also, right, we have the incongruity of this joke is that this person thinks that they're going to get free Wi-Fi from this high tech, and there's a QR code. And then the lowest of low tech, just a hand shows up and steals your phone from you. And we're laughing at the guy that has his phone stolen, even though he's just a victim, But the incongruity people will tell you, well, there's incongruity here too. But the superiority people, I mean, there's different nuances as to their arguments between each other. And then there's self-deprecating humor, which is the superiority humor, but where you laugh at yourself. So here it says, just because I'm trash doesn't mean I can't do great things. It's called garbage can, not garbage cannot. So self-deprecating humor, because it is a specific case of the superiority, but where I am the one that's inferior or the person who's telling the joke. And that's why it's very disarming. It makes people at ease. But of course, if it is overused or if it's used wrongly, it can be a bad symptom that there is unhealthy
Yeah,
self-deprecating humor.
we,
But
we we talk now about echoisms. I can remember my dad talking about people having an inferiority complex, and that's what
yeah,
this points to, that it can become rather wearing when people are putting themselves down all the time.
yeah. So these are the three main theories of humor. There are others. But as we saw, they each one of them is incompatible with some aspect of awe. So we saw in the humor side, we have incongruity, which is realizing that you made a mistake, that there's something that doesn't match something else. Well, the really real, of course, is that there is no incongruity. There is the really real, right? So in that sense, they are incompatible. If we take the next theory of humor, that humor is funny and playful, while awe is serious, we see again an incompatibility. While in the third theory of humor, the superiority, when we use superiority humor to feel like we are better than something else, that we are bigger than someone else, let's say, to use a size metaphor. But with awe, as we saw many times, we feel like we are in the presence of something bigger than us. So we feel small in the presence of the universe, of God, of whatever. But we feel like there's something greater than us. There's a higher power, I don't know, whatever metaphor you want to use. So that is incompatible with the superiority. And
And
so,
that becomes blasphemy within
mhm,
religions, to the point where, as the life of Brian shows us, you can be stoned to death for saying the
yeah,
word Jehovah, even if you're
mhm,
John Cleese. So religion is
yeah,
serious business. That these beliefs, and this carries on into the new religious movements, these
mhm,
groups which are saying, no, you can't take the mickey out of us because this
yeah,
is really real. This is really
and
serious and
and
has to be
and and
taken seriously.
and we have a sensitivity to criticism that also
Mm.
comes with other attachments. So,
Oddly enough. And we will get to it, but in breaking that seriousness, in being able to make fun, to poke fun at beliefs, which are, let's
mhm,
face it, ridiculous. In
yeah,
Scientology, where you have Ron Hubbard talking about the planet Venus being inhabited and having railway lines on it, which
mhm,
has a median temperature, I believe, of 400 degrees centigrade. So they'd be
yeah,
melting as they move.
mhm,
But
yeah,
so even though it is palpably ridiculous, you are not allowed to
mhm,
criticize this. And
yeah,
you'll find the same thing in the various Bronze Age religions, that they have beliefs that we can show are untrue. You
mhm,
know, Joshua didn't make the sun stand still, for example, because
yeah.
everybody would have gone flying off the planet if he had. But you can get into a point where a community where you are not allowed to observe that. And
Yeah, and I
so
think that
breaking the spell and the enchantment, the brainwashing, whatever we want to call it, of a group, a very important part of that is humor. But we'll probably get
yeah,
to that
yeah,
later.
yeah. We'll get to that, but
It's a
I
spoiler
think
alert.
that for people who are true believers and people who do feel awe, doesn't have to be that strong of awe, but sufficiently strong awe, that awe can make it that they don't notice that that belief is funny. The psychological incompatibility, they actually cannot realize or
Yeah,
do not realize.
the cognitive dissonance is too much for them.
And of course, there are many cults and many high awe people in high awe situations where they become humorless. But let's get to another reason to think that they're incompatible, and that is the strange and fascinating case of the neurological condition called temporal lobe epilepsy, which in some cases can make people hyper religious. That's the neurological term. Hyperreligiosity. There's one neurologist who calls it enhanced religiosity. But people with this condition feel awe a lot, and they feel it frequently, and they feel it very strongly. And this is the neurological description from the Bear Video inventory. One of the symptoms is religiosity, and these are temporal lobe epileptics that suffer from the Geschwind syndrome. So, religiosity holding deep religious beliefs, often idiosyncratic, multiple conversions, mystical states. So, I would say that includes frequent awe experiences and, of course, another among many other very interesting traits of this condition is humorlessness, sobriety, overgeneralized ponderous concern, humor lacking, or idiosyncratic. So we see that in this neurological condition that causes a lot of awe experiences, we also get humorlessness. So that's another hint that they are incompatible. And yet, as the great Christian Charcot told us when I gave this presentation in your living room a few months ago, there is a very curious case where the highest point, the highest amount of awe and the greatest humor can coexist. And this happens when someone has a very, very strong awe experience, and that awe experience makes them realize that something has been proved, that some guru is God, or something that makes them convert, undergoes a conversion, makes them realize that reality as they thought of it was completely wrong, because the awe experience made them realize that now they saw that which is really real, and the really real involves some cult being onto something, being whatever.
The Hale
And
Bopp comet coming along to carry you
yeah,
away.
can be, but it's really real. And people can then interpret the whole situation as a joke, that their life up to this point was the setup, and this experience is the punchline. And now they realize that their entire life up to this point was just ridiculous, and was I was thinking of things wrong, right? In the incongruity theory of humor, but the I was thinking about this things wrong is not just for the setup of the joke. It's for the first how many years of my life up until this point, where I found out the punchline, where I realized how I should have been thinking about things the whole time. And then for those people in that very peak experience that is part of a very fundamental personal transformation, people can find humor in that situation, and very profound humor. And according to Christian, he observed this. So, and that is a very fascinating. Now, this doesn't contradict the idea that in general humor and awe are incompatible, but their highest point is the same highest point. Now, this, and I'll just do a open parentheses, this dynamic where you have two things that are antagonistic to each other, and yet their highest point is at the same point. You see that in the thinking of Alexis de Tocqueville, who says that equality and freedom are antagonists. If you want to increase equality, you decrease freedom, or if you increase freedom, you decrease equality. And yet the highest point of equality and the highest point of freedom are the same point. So where everybody is equal is the point of maximum freedom. And so you just have a similar dynamic. But that's, let's close the brackets on that. And that's not. Let's
Yeah,
go back to,
liberty for wolves is death for sheep, as Isaiah Berlin put it. So, yeah, there is a point where this concept of liberty or freedom becomes paradoxical. And
yeah,
as you say, as de Tocqueville said, there is this
yeah,
imbalance of elements.
yeah. But the highest point is together. So also
Yeah.
with awe and humor, it could be that the highest point is there is an overlap, and yet they are antagonistic. So let's get to common aspects, right? So far we've been talking about how they're different, but now let's talk about how they do have some similarities as well. So first, both awe and humor offer relief for highly stressed people, but they do so in very different ways. So awe makes you relax. And people who are being tortured many times would think about God or think about their parents. And that is through a connection to the attachment system and how parental figure relax. They offer a secure base.
Yeah.
And so awe or love or parents, child to parent love, relaxes and lowers people's stress. Now, humor does this, and there are many cases of martyrs telling jokes, right? I think Thomas More, there's some people on the rack telling the stories of martyrs. And the way that helps you deal with the situation is that it forces the situation into the playful mode. So because humor is necessarily playful, you can add humor to a very, very, very bad gallows humor. And that forces you into the playful psychology, and that's easier to deal with the situation when it's a playful situation rather than a very serious situation. So another connection is that they both relate to the feelings of knowing or the feelings of not knowing, or the feeling that we figured something out. So with awe, you can have the feeling that I understood things. And of course, the feelings of knowing are based on a book that we both know and appreciate called On Being Certain by Robert Burton, who talks about the feelings of knowing. In the incongruity theory of humor, humor comes when you realized that you made a mistake, while in the just awe, when awe manifests as an insight, as a cognition or a win in Scientology jargon, you feel like you understood things, right? So they both have this feeling of understanding that they relate to. Next is that they're both easier to induce in a crowd than they are to induce in an individual. That's why it was easier for me to get a laugh out of a crowd than it was to get a laugh out of just you.
But you said I shouldn't laugh.
Yeah, that's right. Next, we have that there are triggers, right? So awe is triggered by something that is judged to be sufficiently anomalous, for example, a miracle or an unusual situation or a state of consciousness or something very, very unusual can induce awe. And incongruity is, according to one theory, what induces awe or humor. And yet, what is anomalous and what is incongruent can have an overlap. So, if I would do a miracle where I turned water into Gatorade, which is a sports drink, then that some people can see that as a joke where I'm just laughing at Christianity. And some people say, well, that's actually a miracle. That can be induce awe. So there's a lot of interpretation that tells you which path to take this unusual thing. Next is that both awe and humor can be used to bypass. So this is emotional bypassing. So in the case, it's called mystical bypass, right? Or I guess spiritual bypasses, where you have your own personal problems and you want to not think about those problems. And so you meditate or do something to induce awe, and that awe allows you to ignore your problems and to,
Be mindful instead.
yeah, exactly. And you think about things that are really real instead of the fact that you owe money or whatever that that
Your
you're
house is
sick.
on fire.
Yeah. And humor is another way to bypass where you can whistle across the graveyard or you joke around to turn the bad situation into playful, right? So they're both allow you to ignore your problems. So those are some of the common aspects between those strange psychological things. Now, let's take a step back and discuss why awe is so important in this context, because we're talking about cults, and so far we haven't mentioned cults and we haven't mentioned recovery. So, my argument, which is in the book or in the presentation I gave, is that the emotion of awe is to religion like the emotion of love is to family, and that love, the emotion in the religious psychological context, was transformed into the emotion of awe, even though there are similarities. In the family context, we have falling in love, which is more distinct parentally, which can happen involuntarily when someone puts a baby on your doorstep or something. But the religious psychology equivalent is a sudden religious conversion or being born again, which is when you convert to something you already believe in. Then in the family psychology, we have limerence or being romantically infatuated, being in love. In the religious psychology context, that manifests as the state of fervor, the prolonged psychological state of fervor. And then we have attachment to family identity, and in religion we have belief identity, which comes with all sorts of things. So awe is to fervor like love is to infatuation, but love, the emotional experience meaning of the word love.
Yep.
And love experiences are catalysts to falling in love, and similarly, awe experiences are catalysts to conversion, where you can change your life, where you can get an irrational commitment that is lifelong, where you can develop a sensitivity to criticism, a resilience to punishment, all sorts of stuff that comes with. Now, normal awe experiences, they strengthen a person's faith, but sufficiently strong awe experiences can cause a conversion. So this could seem like a contradiction. What I mean that the same type of experience can have two opposite effects, right? It can either strengthen your faith or makes you change your faith. And so that is a weird thing to describe. But the thing is that we also see that dynamic in the psychology of love, where a regular love experience can strengthen a family and solidify the coherence and strength of family bonds, but a sufficiently strong love experience, which happens in the right context, in the right situation with assumptions and expectations, just like the awe experience, and that can cause someone to fall in love romantically with someone else, which is how a family can fall apart. So that can break up a family sufficiently strong. So we have also this two opposite effects of the emotional experience also in the context of love and family. Now, both love and awe we have here William James. This is a quote by the great William James, who tells us that mystical experiences, which is what I refer to as strong awe experiences, they have a noetic quality. And the word noetic means relating to knowledge. And he says, although so similar to states of feeling, mystical states seems to those who experience them to be also states of knowledge. They are illuminations, revelations full of significance and importance, and as a rule, they carry with them a curious sense of authority for aftertime. Now, this is him describing mystical experiences or strong awe experiences, but notice that the love experiences where you fall in love with a baby are also states of feeling, but they also manifest as states of knowledge, which is the knowledge that you need to take care of the baby. And they are illuminations and they're revelations and they're full of significance and importance. Of course, it's very important. And there's a curious sense of authority for aftertime because that event can change your life for the rest of your life. You can now be
You'll be
parent. It can,
looking after those children for the rest of your life.
yeah, there you go. So we see those similarities. And now with awe plays a very important role, a different role than love plays in family. And that is because awe experience proves things that are not related to what caused the awe experience. So, for example, someone walking underwater could be a proof that ghosts exist. Like in the Bible, they thought that that's what that meant. But it could also be proof that aliens live amongst us, that we live in a simulation, that Islam is correct, that Scientology is correct. It could be all sorts of things could be proven, but for the people that it proves to them that Jesus is the Son of God, that's what it proves. So they have no doubt that they saw that Jesus had unusual buoyancy and therefore he has to be the Son of God, the Messiah, right? So what we have here is that establishing experience causes someone to hold beliefs, right? Because it functions as a proof. Awe functions as a proof. Now, love, strong love experience, for example, when you adopt a baby, that is also proof of beliefs. Just that the proof is that you need to care of the baby, and the beliefs is that the baby is important. With awe, because it interacts with symbolic language, the proof can be that a whole set of ideas is correct. So it's a much more fundamental transformation. Now, the attachment intensity, right? So it causes an attachment. We have here the experiences, which is awe experiences or other emotional experiences, and those prove that beliefs and other beliefs plus are correct. And when those make us behave in a way that induces additional awe experiences or other significant experiences, then you can get a positive feedback where this strengthens each other when this is a vicious cycle. And then it can be self-maintained. And in cults, this becomes stronger and stronger, and you get very high attachment intensity or brings you to the state of fervor. Now, things are more complicated because we got expectations, we got rationalizations, there's other stuff going on here, but that's, Now, here are awe experiences, and this was my awe lecture from a while ago. So as you can see, I have a lot to say, and I think I have versions of it on your YouTube channel. So I
Indeed, you
guess,
too. There are, I think, two talks that add up to an explanation of this, which is to say, is really important in giving a perspective. So many people over the last 40 years have come to me and said, why was I so stupid? How did I become involved with this? And as you've said, it's like they've walked in some dog mess. That's how they were so stupid. It's just something that happened to them. It's the wrong time and the wrong thing. So there's how it starts. But then it continues through a series of stages, which I think you've described very adequately. For many people, for most people, they will go through these stages. And so in recovery, it can be very important to understand what was the inexplicable event? What was the miracle? What was it that made you feel this must be true? That this is really real, that your life has been leading up to this? And how did you then attach to the group and become really the leader of the group becomes a parental figure, the fellow group members become your siblings, and as you've said, the belief system becomes your baby, and nobody must criticize your baby.
Yeah, the belief system or the group or the technology or the essence of the cult becomes a baby figure that you need to nourish and you need to help flourish and all that. And awe, it's sort of like the glue that holds everything together. So because of that, because awe is incompatible with humor, we see that there are certain people in certain situations, first of all, where they are unable to have humor, right? And as part of their recovery, as a therapist or someone that tries to help someone recover, if you see that their humor is starting to come back, then that is a positive indication,
Yes.
right? So, first of all, it might be general humor, and then it might be more and more humor about what happened. And then when someone is even further recovered, then maybe they can laugh about the group. Maybe they can laugh about the group leader. Maybe they can laugh about themselves before they joined. And I think all of those, being able to laugh at all of those things, is a very positive, very beneficial tool for recovery. Also, laughing, I think, helps recover. So, humor can be a tool for recovery, but it's also an indicator that recovery is happening.
Yeah.
Now, yeah,
Can I
yeah,
interject there that
sure.
what you can also see in people in recovery is a kind of vicious humor, an
Hmm.
attack upon the leader of the group and people within the group, and that this is not a sign of recovery. This
Hmm.
is a sign of malice. This
Hmm.
is a sign of how uncomfortable the person is, in fact, about the
Hmm.
experience. When they can be light-hearted, when they can see that something they did was ridiculous or silly,
Hmm.
then things start to open up. But often, as people come away from a group, they are as serious as stone. They are
Hmm.
absolutely solid. And seeing that lift and seeing somebody re engage with
Hmm.
the world is a marvelous thing. And humor is essential to that.
Yeah, possibly necessary, but yeah, certainly very, very important. But of course, we have to remind people that there are situations where the humor is impossible, where things are just too horrible. And so, when possible,
Yeah, absolutely. You
yeah,
can't look back on the
and
career of
there's things that you can,
Jeffrey Epstein and laugh about
yeah,
what he was doing to girls. You know,
yeah,
what he was
yeah,
doing was
or people who
horrific, and
lost family
it will
members.
never be funny. And the
Yeah,
same,
and
yeah, as you say, with when things have been too extreme to be risible, then they
yeah,
aren't. And that's a sign
and
that something is actually wrong with the person if they start finding the persecution of those they
yeah,
hate an
yeah.
amusing thing, or the Schadenfreude becomes
Hmm.
destructive towards other people. That's not healthy.
Yeah, of course. But because of this connection between humor and the capacity for recovery and as a tool for recovery, I think that there is a big value to groups of ex-members,
Mm,
right? Communities of people who all left the same group,
mm,
if such a group exists. And the reason why those are so beneficial is because, first of all, many people who leave cults, they find out that when they tell someone that they've been in a cult and that person is not connected to the world of cults, the situation immediately becomes serious.
yes.
There's no humor. Oh my God, you were in a cult, you were raped repeatedly or whatever. No humor. We're going to be serious. Are you okay? This is no joking matter. And so many times, whenever cults are brought up in a regular situation, it sucks all the potential for humor from the situation, unless you are in a group of ex members.
Mm,
So when you have ex-members, either all ex-members of the same group or ex-members of different groups, which happens in the cultic studies conferences,
mm.
then you can have humor. You can have a situation where you can talk about your cult experience and other people can be playful about it. You can be playful about it. You can joke about what happened. And with groups of ex-members from the same group, you have inside jokes.
Yeah.
So you can joke in a way that nobody that hasn't been in the group would get what you're
You can't
laughing at.
mention devotees to anybody but Scientologists, and even they
Hmm.
might not know what we're talking about. But
Yeah.
that's my term for Scientologists. They're
Hmm.
devotees, but that's
Uh-huh.
very specific. There's no way that anybody outside of the
Yeah.
situation could understand that, and I'm not going to explain it.
Yeah. The OT.
Send me £10 and I'll
I'll explain the
start a
joke.
cult.
Yeah. So that's why it's beneficial, but also going to a therapist that has a lot of experience with ex-cult members also can help the whole therapeutic situation to not be just super, super serious and without any shade of humor, which I assume happens when therapists don't know anything about cults. And so everything is so catastrophic. Well, if a therapist knows enough about cults and about the specific cult, then it might not be quite as somber.
And it's a
Um,
very important point to make, and it's something that is missed, that a therapist has to understand the context of a person's life before they can help them. And I have seen many situations where people left a group, went to a therapist, and the therapist then asked them about their childhood or tried to change their cognitive behavior through cognitive
Yeah.
behavioral therapy or something. And until you've actually dealt with the impact of the cult on the person's personality, you're not going to get through. It's not going to be helpful. And in
Hmm.
fact, I have known situations where therapy was quite damaging to a
Hmm.
person because they didn't feel understood. And a part of being understood is being able to share humor with people, is being able to
Hmm.
understand that these things are ridiculous and
Yeah.
we can share our
Yeah.
laughter.
And the thing is that also with cults, there is the assertion, which I saw in Steve Hassan, that the weirder the cult is, the more the chance that abuse is going on in that
Mm.
cult. So if someone tells you, yeah, we're in the cult and we threw dog biscuits at the moon and on Wednesdays at midnight or something, the
And
weirder
the
it is,
werewolves went running after them.
the weirder the story is about what we did in the cult, the higher chance that there is abuse in there.
Mm.
But the weirder things is, the more easy it is to laugh at. So it could be that the worse abuse is, the weirder stuff there is, but that also allows you to laugh at all that weird stuff if you are able to look at it in a playful way.
Yeah.
So within part of recovery, there is general humor, just laugh about anything, and that's already good. The person left, and I talked to a number of people who been in cults, and they told me, yeah, the whole time I was in the cult, there was no humor
Mm.
whatsoever. I was praying. I needed everything to be super awe. We're praying 10 hours a day or whatever, and it was humorless.
Mm.
And so for them, in the initial recovery, any type of humor, any humor is good. But when you advance, there is specific domain humor about the specific situations. So for example, I grew up in Israel where I was systematically traumatized by Holocaust narratives. And there was a joke that every Israeli kid knew. This was a very common joke. And the joke was, what's worse than finding a worm in your apple? And the punchline is finding half a worm in your apple, right? And that was funny to kids because that means you ate the other half. But when I got to high school, we had a different take on this joke when we would ask, so what's worse than finding half a worm in your apple? And the person would tell you, well, I don't know. And then the answer would be, well, the Holocaust, like, duh, you should have known that. When I gave this talk in front of a crowd, that got the biggest laugh, that
Mm.
punchline. So the
It,
Holocaust was the punchline that got the biggest involuntary reaction. But you're going to say
I was going to
something?
say that after you gave the presentation here in July, that I
Yeah,
tormented our poor friend Kenny
yeah,
because he said, I'm never going to laugh at the Holocaust. And trying to sort of say, you're not laughing at the Holocaust.
yeah,
We could put in World War II
yeah.
or the rape of
Or
Lucretia or anything you like
any, yeah,
that goes there. But in Israel, when,
yeah,
as you
in
say, you've been
my,
systematically
yeah,
taught, this is going to happen to you any minute
yeah,
now, then it is a way of diffusing some of
yeah.
that. So it has a relevance.
So if you can tell a joke that is within the domain of the cult, so for example, if someone left a Christian cult, they might, right? These are people who are doing the YMCA
MCA.
dance, right?
Mm.
This is the Y and Jesus is doing the Y and this is the M, this is the C and the A. And so you can joke, put someone who left a Christian themed cult, or you might, this is a joke. And then a thought came across Joseph's mind. This is the father of Jesus. If God created Adam from mud and dust, couldn't he create his own son instead of fucking my wife, right?
And to be
Uh,
absolutely accurate to any Christians who are watching, he didn't.
yeah, yeah,
It
that's
was
right.
announced to her that she was
Yeah, I mean,
pregnant.
it was through the ear because God speaks things into existence.
That's
And so
right.
he spoke
Exactly. Yeah.
to her
Yeah.
ear, which created Jesus in her womb.
I think we're
Um,
too late now. I think we've offended them anyway. So
yeah,
never
yeah.
mind.
So then if someone left an Eastern themed cult where they believe in karma, then this joke, karma means I can rest easy at night knowing that the people I treated badly had it coming,
I've heard
right?
a real life version of that, which was a guy who walked into, I think it was the Manchester Scientology
Hmm.
organization, and punched one of the salespeople, knocked him to the floor, and said, "You pulled that in."
Yeah, which is Scientology for you made it happen.
Mm.
Yeah, now here is a quote by Jean Cocteau. Fight any instinct to be humorless, for humorlessness is the worst of all absurdities. And I think that I would say that I'm all for awe. I consider myself an awe junkie, maybe.
You go
Or,
whale watching. What can we say?
yeah, I go whale watching. I listen to classical music in the concert hall. all sorts of awe-inducing stuff.
Mm.
But as much as I like awe, I will not sacrifice humor for anything. I will not. I say safety third, and that's because kindness is first and humor is second. If I had to choose between awe and humor, I choose humor. But still, have as much awe as you can. Don't sacrifice your humor for it.
Yeah, and
Um,
understand that it's an experience that shouldn't be controlling you. You know,
mm,
we like novelty, we like to be infatuated, we spend our lives wanting something new
yeah,
and wonderful to happen to us. That's fine, as long as you're not under the control of
yeah.
whoever is delivering that experience.
There's no
That's not
there's no
healthy.
high demand situation that has
Yeah.
been,
And so laugh at people if they try and do that to you.
yeah. Maybe not at their face. There is that
No,
sensitivity
no.
to criticism, which
Mm.
can be quite strong.
Yeah, safety
Uh,
first in this case, but
there you go. So this is the end of the talk.
and
And this
originally it
is,
did read death threats as well, didn't it? But then you
yeah, yeah,
decided insults
yeah,
would probably be a bit
uh,
better. So
yeah, yeah. So, so do you have any comments for this talk? Any final questions?
no, I don't have any questions.
Hmm.
By now, this is what my third time, I think.
Yeah.
I'm reasonably used to it, but I am in awe of it.
Thank you.
And if anybody jokes or degrades about this in the comments, we will send them to ethics.
That's right. Yes, this is for sure. Yeah, I guess until next time.
Yeah, and
Uh,
any questions or comments you do have,
of course.
please put them there. We might be able to persuade Yuval to answer them. You never know.
Yes. Like and
Um,
subscribe.
and absolutely look forward to your new book. You've written a lovely review of my new book on Amazon. So
Thank you.
everybody go to
Yeah.
amazon.com and see what a lovely review it is. You maybe write a humorful review later of
No?
it, and the jokes about the Nazis that people don't know or something like that. Who knows? But
Yeah.
no, it's been extremely interesting, and I'm
Hmm.
sure that our
Yeah.
viewers will find it the same. So thank you very much, Yuval.
Thank you.
Hi, John here. Thanks for watching. We'd appreciate it very much if you would click like, as well as subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Every dollar helps, and we welcome new patrons on Patreon, or you can make a one-off payment with any currency through PayPal. Thanks so much.